So the topic that I will discuss now is the reception of Čiurlionis in Spain. And I will start with explaining the design of the research. Great. So the initial research question is rather simple. What do we know about Čiurlionis in Spain? And which of his pieces have we seen and heard? The goals that I intend to achieve are to measure the scope of his interest in Spain, how much or how little people in Spain are interested in Čiurlionis, to identify which are the actors promoting the divulgation of his work, so who is actively working in promoting the figure of Čiurlionis in Spain, and to determine the artistic and national discourses used to contextualize his figure. This is the part about the reception. So the interest is not only to document and know what have we seen and heard of Čiurlionis in Spain, but actually understand how he is perceived by Spanish society and by Spanish academicals and historians. And the main use of this research would be to actually evaluate the transfer of knowledge to the general public. So if the discourses and ideas that are being developed in academia actually reach the general public through transference activities like concerts and exhibitions, and also as a basis for new cultural policy making and for the developing of different plans for the future divulgation of Čiurlionis. So I think it's necessary to understand what we know and what we're doing about Čiurlionis to plan the future divulgation of this figure. So the first part, in order to do so, is to document the different events that have happened in Spain regarding the figure of Čiurlionis. And the total that we can find is more than 300 references to Čiurlionis on the press, which has been the main source for this research. A total of 7 exhibitions, different concerts, radio programs, and academic publications, which are more than I initially was expecting to find, and definitely more than I can explain in 20 minutes. So there are many names that I would acknowledge and many quotes that I would read from the press, but I will actually have to run quicker through the presentation and give only the key details. But you will be able to see a lot on the screen. So I will start chronologically ordering and explaining what I have been able to find. And I will start with the first mention of Čiurlionis. These appear around the year 1975. This is the moment in which the dictator of Spain dies. So if Spain up to this moment had been close to external cultural influences from Europe in general, but especially from the eastern side of Europe, the dictatorship was strongly anti-communist, so anything coming from this side was completely forbidden. And also it was ultra-Catholic. So an artist that, as Čiurlionis, that was perceived, as we will see later on the press, as a Masonic artist, was especially not welcome at the moment. So in this time, Spain opens up to different and external influences, and from the very start, Čiurlionis starts to appear, mentions to him start to appear on the press. We will see, for example, around the comments of exhibitions about Kandinsky, an artist called Čiurlionis will be mentioned on the press, still not clearly knowing who he is, but the name already appears here. And also on the musical side, we can see, for example, misunderstandings such as the time when the Lithuanian Chamber Orchestra played in Madrid and Segovia, the press announced Čiurlionis as a Polish composer, after who the Vilnius Conservatory is named, associating him somehow to the Polish school. This was rather the situation for the Castilian Spanish press. However, on the Catalan press, we can find some references also from the very start of this period, in which they claimed Čiurlionis as an artist representing a nationality that was somehow minorized in Europe, creating a parallel with the Catalan artists that were also minorized in the European context of multinationality. So they promote, for example, already in 1976, they published this paper about the resurrection of Čiurlionis. The great artist belonging to small nationalities has been ignored outside of their countries. And on the 80s, we can find similar, strongly nationalist discourses promoting Lithuanian nationality and the recognition of the uniqueness of Lithuanian nationality, also mentioning Čiurlionis. In this paper, for example, with the header of people with a race and a culture distinct than the Russians, which is about the Lithuania in general, they point to the Čiurlionis Museum as one of the cultural centers of Lithuania. And herein when they state that the fact that Čiurlionis is one of the few Lithuanian intellectuals of non-Christian orientation, theist, Franco-Masonic inspiration in his work is maybe the reason of the importance that today is given to him. So in this context in Spain, some conservative sides were still very against all of the modernity in art that was associated with Masonic artists. So Čiurlionis is still a figure that is perceived somehow as polemic. So after these first mentions that we can find on the press, when is the first moment in which we can actually see the work of Čiurlionis in Spain? This would be on the early 90s in the context of the Lithuanian independence. So all of this political context in Lithuania will have a strong repercussion on the press in Spain, especially portrayed through the figure of Vytautas Landsbergis. So as we can see, he will appear many, many times on the press. They will dedicate very long documentaries about his figure, and every time that they were speaking of Landsbergis, they were speaking of Čiurlionis, when contextualizing his biography and the musicological work that he has done about Čiurlionis. In this context, the new recordings of Čiurlionis were published by the new French-Soviet music label Saison Russe. So now that the recordings were available, many music magazines echoed this new release, saying, oh, now you can find the CD of the composer that the Lithuanian president plays in the piano of his presidential office. So they used this connection between the mediatic interest on Landsbergis to promote also the music of Čiurlionis. And we can find that, for example, especially in the Catalan radio, these recordings were listened often between 1991 and 1995, linking with this kind of sympathy that the Catalan national movement had with the Lithuanian national movement. And well, as we can see on the reviews on the magazines, they were again linking the figure of Čiurlionis to the figure of Landsbergis. The second stage of reception that we can find will be now about his visual work, the paintings, and this will be in the turn of the millennium. This time, the origin of this interest will be mainly artistical, and we will see that the institutions involved are the private art museum and galleries, that in this international context of interest on the new more metaphysical and mystical links between the human and the world, the nature, the universe, a new interest arises in Čiurlionis. And in Spain we can find 3 exhibitions that touch this topic that include pieces by Čiurlionis, which will be these 3. In the first one, they are linking Čiurlionis to the Russian symbolist school, given that most of the pieces were coming from the Russian State Museum in St. Petersburg, and they were hosting they were storing some of the Čiurlionis paintings, and since he was also known during this period in St. Petersburg, they are linking him to the symbolist school. The second one would be Cosmos, which includes from romantic landscapes to contemporary pictures of the planets taken by new technological cameras. They also include here Čiurlionis, but this time the exhibition is around the topic of the universe. And the pieces that we can find here by Čiurlionis are the Sonata of the Stars, the Castle Fairy Tale, and Lightnings. Although not many pictures of Čiurlionis were shown here, he becomes one of the names in the artistic world. And on the following years, we can find exhibitions about other different artists that were contemporary to Čiurlionis, and his name was always coming up on the different conferences that were given along with these exhibitions. So in 2003, the exhibition programmed in the Thyssen Museum about musical analogies, Kandinsky and his contemporaries, included many pieces by Čiurlionis, and up to this point has been the one with the largest exhibition of Čiurlionis paintings. They included the whole cycle of the creation of the world, the Sonata of the Sun, and this diptych by Čiurlionis. And again, it's especially remarkable that the exhibition was programming Čiurlionis based on the artistical interest of his painting, also of this idea of a painter that was also a composer and that was including the musical thinking in his painting. And they portray him in the catalog literally as an international composer, as an international painter, sorry, that is neither from the East nor from the West. And now this third stage, so far we have seen a first interest shown by a political interest on the media that was used to promote Čiurlionis music. The second one is led by the private artistic institutions, and this third stage will be led by the diplomatic institutions. And this peak in the reception of his work is motivated mainly by the celebration of the 20 years of diplomatic relations between Spain and Lithuania, and the Lithuanian presidency of the Council of the European Union. So especially the Lithuanian embassy in Madrid organizes an exhibition, a monographic exhibition about Čiurlionis, that between 2012 and 2014 toured different cities of Spain, mainly consisting of these panels with pictures and information about his biography, and also 30 reproductions of his paintings, which we can see up on the upper part and here on the left. And also in this context, the Čiurlionis conferences were realized in the Royal Superior Conservatory of Madrid. Again, bringing back the exhibition created by the embassy, and also with lectures about Lithuanian music, a donation of scores and recordings of Lithuanian music to the library of the conservatory, and different classes given to the students on how to play Čiurlionis, and a final concert that was organized. And this also has some repercussion on the press, and the musical magazines again brought back Čiurlionis to their pages. And the fourth stage, or the fourth peak, can be found in 2018-19, and what we find here now, which is still the situation up to the present day, is now a combination of all of these different factors. So there will be an involvement of the diplomatic institutions, of the embassy and the different consulates, but we can also find an interest shown by the private artistic institutions or by individuals that are making efforts to program and to bring Čiurlionis to Spain. So in the context of the 100th anniversary of the reestablishment of the Lithuanian state, we can hear Čiurlionis in concerts programmed by the consulates, but we can also find different reports and programs on the radio and the printed press about Lithuania mentioning and including Čiurlionis' work. And we can also see individual efforts, like the concert, for example, given by Renata Marcinkute in Igualada in the context of the International Festival of Organ Music, who included Čiurlionis in her program, or even an Erasmus Plus short exchange led by the primary school Josep Masclans, also from the region of Igualada, dedicated to the promotion of national figures. So the Catalan children explained to the Lithuanian children about Gaudí, and the Lithuanians promoted the figure of Čiurlionis. And we can also find exhibitions like Blue, the Color of Modernism, dedicated mainly to Catalan painters from the Modernist period, from the Art Nouveau period, that also included pieces by Čiurlionis, which has a trailer that can be found in YouTube. And also the exhibition Art Sound ? Which treats the idea of the sound, the category of sound art from a critical perspective, analyzing if actually we could speak or not of the category of sound art in plastic arts, also including the paintings by Čiurlionis, and also has a trailer available online. So the idea is that we can find efforts coming from the very official diplomatic institutions, but also from other external institutions or even individuals that are programming Čiurlionis. And this is the idea or the stage that we are also in now, in the present day, with very strong promotion coming from the 150th anniversary that is being organized mainly by the consulate in Valencia, with several different activities like, for example, the presentation of the book Vilnis by Barbara Mingo, which is an original book in Spanish in an essay format about the author's trip to Lithuania to see Čiurlionis' work here and see his different houses and museums around Lithuania. So it's dedicated to the divulgation of Čiurlionis. We can also see the recent movie about Landsbergis explaining his relation to Čiurlionis that was also screened at the Contemporary Cultural Center of Valencia. And one of the most original ones that was a collection of flamenco dresses inspired on Čiurlionis, especially for the 150th anniversary, that was presented at the International Flamenco Fashion Week in Sevilla, with different dresses inspired in the themes that Čiurlionis used to paint, like the sky and the clouds, motifs from Čiurlionis paintings, like these flowers from the creation of the world in the middle, or Lithuanian traditional motifs. And we can also find concerts at the José Iturbi Conservatory in Valencia, and an exhibition a collective exhibition of pictures taken by children that participated in a Lithuanian summer camp in Valencia that were taking pictures thinking of the concept of freedom as Čiurlionis portrayed it in his own photographies, because one of the main activities was the exhibition Prelude of Freedom that included all of the pictures that Čiurlionis took during his trip to the Caucasus, that was exhibited in Valencia, that will be I think in the present now is in Castellón, and will also go to Tenerife. And we can also see that one of the future activities in January is programmed on the 23rd to the 25th. The concert conducted by Mirga Grajinite will take place with the National Spanish Orchestra, including the Mixque by Čiurlionis as the first piece of the concert. So given this chronological overview, I will point a very last few ideas that come when we look at each category by its own. So when we look at the different exhibitions that have taken place, we can find that the very first one was linking Čiurlionis to the Russian symbolist school. And by the existing literature, this very first one was taken as the example to link Spain along with countries like France that included Čiurlionis as part of the Russian symbolist school. However, when we look at the ones which are the ones in orange that have been curated by Spanish art historians, they have always portrayed Čiurlionis as an international artist linked to the modernist school and based on the artistic interest of his paintings. So rather, the perception that exists in Spanish art historian is this one: Čiurlionis as an artist that combined music and painting in an international artistic context. When we look at the concerts, all but one have been performed by Lithuanian musicians. So there is a lack of the programming of Čiurlionis in Spain by Spanish players and concert organizers, and mostly has been played when Lithuanians came to perform in Spain. In the radio, however, he has been played mainly with many other international composers from the classical canon, mainly in programs dedicated to programmatic music. So programs destined to music inspired on the sea or on the forest, and they were programming his symphonic poems. About the publications, we can only find two about Čiurlionis as a composer, and actually the first one, although it's published in the Spanish Musicological Journal, comes from Christoph Drova, which is not Spanish. And most of the academical and journalistic publications have taken place on the field of history of art, either catalogs from museums or other papers in the field of art. And when we locate all of these initiatives in the map, we can see that most of them have taken place between Madrid and Barcelona as the two main cultural centers of Spain. But also we can highlight the region of Valencia, the orange one to the right, and Albacete and Murcia. These two have a Lithuanian consulate on their regions, and also the Canary Islands on the left. And these are the regions actually where most of the Lithuanians living in Spain are located. So quickly wrapping up the conclusions, we can find different peak moments of the reception of Čiurlionis in Spain, motivated by different causes, which are either mediatic interest on the political affairs, artistic interest by private galleries, public diplomatic sponsorship, and individual efforts taking place. While in the musical field, because of his relation with Landsbergis, the independence and the portrayal of Lithuanian nationality, he has been mostly linked to the Lithuanian national identity, while in the field of art, he has usually been programmed as an international artist. And the initial linking with the Polish and Russian school was actually very initial, and later on he has been portrayed generally as a Lithuanian artist, especially making an emphasis on this double profile of composer-painter. And one last point is that although multiple exhibitions, publications, and concerts have been organized, Čiurlionis, however, for the main public, for the general public, remains a not well-known artist. So I would say that he is known by the experts of the history of art, and he is known by the experts in music because they are programming him on the radio and some exhibitions. But still, the general public in Spain does not know well the figure of Čiurlionis. And that's it.
Is Salvador Dali ever mentioned in the Spanish reception in connection with Čiurlionis? Because there's some obvious connection, the paranoid critical method, the gigantic scale of some figures that fill the skies. There are a number of parallels to be made. Are these have ever been made specifically in Spain with Salvador Dali?
So like parallels between Čiurlionis and some other Spanish artists? Not generally. There is one paper linking Čiurlionis, for example, with the artist Federico García Lorca. Federico García Lorca. But he was mainly a dramatic writer. He wrote plays, although he also harmonized some folk songs and also used to draw. So they have some connections because they were contemporaries and they were also pluridisciplinary artists. But their artistic conceptions were very, very different. So this is the only time that they have tried to link Čiurlionis with another Spanish artist from the period, but I don't see many real connections, and I have not seen any other. The exhibition, for example, that was exhibiting Čiurlionis paintings along with other Catalans from the same period, they do have connections because they belong to the same aesthetic movement of early modernism in the early 20th century, but there are no direct conceptual connections that could be linked. So no, actually I believe that Čiurlionis stays a very singular artist.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very interesting, and also the archival work that you showed us. I have actually an assumption, and you correct me if I'm wrong, and then I have actually a further explanation to why probably Čiurlionis is not so present in Spanish life or reception, so to speak. First of all, is my understanding, or at least of the findings that you presented to us, correct, that actually Čiurlionis is only, so to speak, on the horizon when there is a special event or linked to something, as linked to a special, how do you say that, exhibition, etc., etc. So then it makes sense. And secondly, I think we could easily add to the reasons you mentioned why he is so not present in the Spanish discourse may have also its traces in how Spaniards, how French, how English people, how Swiss people, how Germans what kind of discourses they have as far as art and music is concerned in their own country. And so that's why probably Čiurlionis does not really fit into these discourses. So we should actually look also at that, how people in specific cultural contexts and matrices do speak about music, and actually how they treat music or actually art in their contexts. So it's not only about how many exhibitions and how many people have heard to a concert A or one or B. So, but it's also a question of what is the matrix, the intellectual matrix behind which Čiurlionis and many, many others which are totally forgotten in a specific culturally context, so to speak.
Yes, I agree very much with this last point, and I think it's very interesting about how we construct the discourses of the history of music. Especially from Spain, the paper that I showed from the first Catalan mention already in 1976, that was already mentioning if Čiurlionis had been shown in Paris at the time, he would be known internationally everywhere across Europe, because we are focusing to construct in the field of history of music, for example, we are looking at Paris, we are looking at Vienna, and the rest barely exist. And also within Spain we have, or I believe that we have a problem, that is that we don't investigate and research our own Spanish composers, because we don't know how to locate them in the international context. We have these focuses in Europe that we are looking very much as the main centers of music and culture, and whatever is not there, we don't know how to fit it. So for us, I see when I look at the Spanish historiography with our own composers that we don't know how to place them. So yes, I believe that, and already this paper from 1976 was already claiming that artists from, not even belonging to national schools, but artists that are from these smaller regions, smaller nations, do not find their place in our current historiography. And I believe that 50 years later, the problem is still very much the same. So yes, I agree very much that one of the problems to locate artists like Čiurlionis in the contemporary state of the literature is that we don't know how to place them in the existing framework. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is this on? Oh, yeah. Sorry, just one small thing. I totally agree with you just about what you just said. I think it's worse than that. I think the cultural space, I'm speaking from a UK perspective here, the cultural space that is available is increasingly limited. For any new artist, it makes a big difference if you're alive and you have an interesting life story, or you're controversial in some way. But the Čiurlionis exhibition in London, which I was speaking at a couple of years ago, the audience loved it. Everyone loved it. It got wonderful reviews in the British press, and it's as if it had never happened. And I think that it's a problem for art in general. Newspaper coverage of the arts in the UK is much, much less than it might have been 20 years ago even. 50 years ago it was enormous, but I remember that. But nowadays it's very tight. So Čiurlionis will appear as a novelty, and he's gone. And I think that's a problem.
Yes, and that could be also one of the conclusions after reviewing the situation in Spain. He pops up in different moments, especially as we just mentioned, whenever there's some kind of commemoration or from historical commemoration from Lithuanian events, then the figure of Čiurlionis comes up. But afterwards, for the general public at least, it disappears, and it doesn't stay much longer. So, yes.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you.